How can parents support energy-sensitive children so they are not emotionally overwhelmed regularly? So I would say that the first step in kind of addressing this question is probably the priority, or the most important part is to teach the child how to deal or how to process emotional intensity. Okay, this is the biggest difficulty that highly sensitive children have, whether they're what's known as HSPs, or highly sensitive people, or whether they're empaths. Empaths and highly sensitive people, when they are children, they have a lot of difficulty processing emotion, usually because they're not taught by their parents. The parents don't know they're sensitive children, and so the child kind of is left on their own, not knowing how to deal with the intensity of emotions, all right? So the most important skill that a sensitive child can have is learning how to process emotions, or creating what's known as emotional resilience, okay? This is really, really important. Now, how do you do that? How do you create emotional resilience, or help create emotional resilience in a child? And that's where the adults come in, right? So the crucial aspect here is for the adults around sensitive children to know how to do that themselves, usually the parents, okay? So you yourself, I imagine that this question is being asked by a parent. So you yourself as a parent, all of the adults or caretakers that are around the child, if they know how to process emotional content within themselves, if they know how to work with emotional intensity, if they know how to work with emotions, if they know how to feel them and process them and sit with them, then what they're going to do is they're going to be the living example that's going to teach the child how to do that, all right? You have to remember a really important quirk in children, especially early on when they're around 5, 6, up until they're around 5, 6, sometimes later. A child is mostly in a brain state that's considered hypnosis, okay? And this brain state means that their brain is literally in a hypnotic state most of the time, which is a really important part of their phase of development as children, because the brain being in hypnosis means they can learn a lot more quickly. They just take in information a lot. So if you remember this about the child's brain, and you also realize that a child is especially if they are sensitive children learn a lot through interaction with energy, because their energy fields are very sensitive, they're very open. So a sensitive child learns a lot from just interacting energetically with the world. So when you know that a sensitive child needs very good living examples of how certain things are done, so that they can feel those examples and learn by example, okay? So if you're a parent of a highly sensitive child, the first thing to always start with is you. How good are you at processing emotions? How good are you at sitting with your emotions, processing them, feeling them without judgment, not rejecting anything, not pushing anything away? The more that you learn how to deal with your own emotions, how to process your own emotions, you're going to be serving directly as an example of how to do that with your child, all right? So that's one way to start, starting with you, especially learning emotional resilience and emotional regulation within yourself. And automatically you're going to be teaching your child. But then there's another aspect that's important. So a lot of times, when I connect with people who are parents of really sensitive children, there's kind of this protection mechanism that takes over. They become hyper protective of their children, and they try to shield them from any kind of stress in the outside world. And I understand where that's coming from, because when you have a sensitive child, or when you remember yourself being a sensitive child, as me, I don't have children, but I remember what it was like growing up as a sensitive child. I can still tap into that inner child and the things that she went through. So when you want to protect a sensitive child, that's highly honorable, and it's so loving and it's wonderful, but it can backfire on you, because if you overly protect a sensitive child, if you try to shield them too much, they can't learn the emotional resiliency. They're going to be growing up in a cocoon, and then guess what? As soon as they grow up and they automatically have to get out in the real world at some point, when they get there, they are unprepared for sometimes the the harshness of it because they grew up in a little cocoon, overly protective. So there's this really fine balance when working with sensitive children and raising them. There's this really fine balance between teaching them how to create emotional resilience within themselves, teaching them how to process their own emotions, and also giving them open space so that they start to kind of interact with the world, even with the harshness of the world sometimes, because they have to learn how to interact with the harshness of the world, being able to process that harshness without being brought down by it or without isolating from it. Okay, so this is a really important balance. It's sometimes a hard balance to keep, to just let your child be free and give them the tools to be able to process anything challenging that may happen to them, especially as sensitive children. All right, when they're children, empaths and highly sensitive people, it's a very delicate time in their development because they're so sensitive and they don't really have the tools at the moment to know how to process all of that sensitivity. But you as a parent or as a caretaker, you can really play such a crucial role. I remember when I grew up, my parents didn't know I was sensitive. There was no such talk about these things when I was little. And so my parents did the best that they could, but they didn't even know they had a sensitive child. And so now this is a different conversation because there are a lot more parents realizing, just because they're having a spiritual awakening, they're starting to realize that they have highly sensitive children at home. And now they're starting to help those children move forward in life without shutting down. Okay. A highly sensitive child, if they don't know how to create emotional resilience in themselves, if they don't know how to process emotions and deal with emotions, they can be traumatized by really small things, relatively small things, and then they have a lot of healing work to do later on. Okay. And you can't prevent all of that as an adult, as the caretaker, as the parent. You can't protect your child 100%, but you can give them the tools that they need in order to understand how to live in the world being sensitive. And one of those tools is emotional resilience. Just teaching them to, practically, what does this mean? Teaching them to sit with their emotions, to feel all of them, helping them understand that there's no emotion that's bad and no emotion that's good. There's a movie, if you've ever seen the movie Inside Out, that's one of my favorite movies on understanding emotions, the movie Inside Out. If you haven't seen it, watch it with your family, watch it with your children. It's a really beautiful place to start because the movie talks exactly about how to address each emotion and how each emotion has a role in our lives. So if you start to teach your child, or any sensitive child, if you start to teach them that anger has a role and sadness has a role and happiness has a role, and if you teach them how to honor those emotions, how to sit with them, how to work with them, how to talk to them, how to process them, then your child is going to be more likely to be able to understand how to use that emotional content so that when something does happen in their outside world, they know how to process those events a lot more quickly. Aside from emotional resilience, I'll leave one last thing, and that is helping sensitive children understand that they're sensitive. I wish I had that when I was a child. I wish someone had come up to me and said, the way that you see the world and the way that you experience the world is perfectly normal. There's nothing wrong with you. Because at the time, and as I grew up into my teenage years, I thought there was something seriously wrong with me because I saw that I experienced the world in a very different way from the people around me. And so I automatically thought there was something wrong with me. So the moment that you impart on your child that there's nothing wrong with them, that maybe they're sensitive, maybe they see and feel the world differently from other children, and that's okay, and there's nothing wrong with that, and they're so beautiful, and they're so strong, and they're so resilient, and then you go ahead and you give them the tools to sit with their emotions, to honor their emotions. If I had a child now, I would definitely teach them meditation. I would teach them to just sit down, close their eyes, focus on their breathing. I would teach them how to focus on their bodies, how to learn how to just sit quiet, sit still for a little while. No screens, no video games, nothing. Just sit down, be still, focus on breathing, focus on meditation. Teach them how to focus on just observing their thoughts and observing their emotions. I would teach them all of this now because this would give them the tools to then grow up understanding that they're sensitive, that there's nothing wrong with that sensitivity, and that it's a superpower. A sensitive child, if they realize that their sensitivities is not a problem, but it's a superpower, that will just make them grow up so much more happier, content, and joyful, understanding that they are beautiful as they were created.